My parents picked my brother's award ceremony over seeing me after a car wreck. Now they want my savings to rescue him from a fraud scandal. I said no. I nearly died in a car crash, shattered and alone in a hospital bed, only to discover my parents chose my brother's awards night over me. But what happened next? That's when things truly spiraled into a nightmare I never saw coming. About 2 weeks ago, life hit me like a truck, literally. I was driving home from work, just another Tuesday, when bam! Another car slammed into me. My car flipped. The paramedics said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky? I ended up with internal bleeding, 2 cracked ribs, and a damaged leg. Emergency surgery. A whole week stuck in the hospital. Just trying to piece together what even happened. It was hell, honestly. Physically, mentally, it was just draining. All I wanted was my parents. I just knew they'd rush over the moment they found out. Not for the whole week, maybe, but just a visit, a call, something. Instead, days went by. Days. I kept waiting, kept checking my phone. Nothing. Not a text, not a call, not a single sign. It was 4 days before I even got a text back from them. The hospital actually told them what happened. They're my emergency contacts, of course. They even called them the day after I was admitted. But the nurses told me my parents sounded, well, unconcerned. Unconcerned. That stung. It cut deep. I tried to make excuses for them, you know? Maybe they were busy. Maybe something big came up. My phone was okay, thankfully, so every few hours I'd text them, just a quick, how are you? Any news? Still nothing. Every single day in that hospital felt like an eternity. I was trying so hard to give them the benefit of the doubt, desperate to see a familiar face. But with every passing hour, it got harder and harder to pretend it was okay. Luckily, I wasn't completely alone. My friends, who live out of state, somehow managed to rally some distant family members to come visit me. And that's when the truth came out. On day 6, a family acquaintance came by. She was so sweet, and in passing, she mentioned how wonderful it was that my brother was getting recognized at an award ceremony. I just stared at her. An award ceremony? I had no idea what she was talking about. She looked confused, then filled me in. My parents hadn't been too busy. They weren't held up by an emergency. They were at my brother's award ceremony. They knew I was in the hospital, fighting for my life, recovering from surgery. But they chose a celebration over their daughter. They were so wrapped up in his big event that they couldn't even bother to check on me. All they cared about was how his ceremony looked, not my injury. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let me be crystal clear. I'm not jealous of my brother. Not at all. I know he's smart. I know he works hard. He's achieved a lot. But here's the thing. He's always been the golden child. Always. Since we were kids, everything he did, every little accomplishment, was met with thunderous applause and praise. Me, I was just there, undetected, unnoticed. He works at a huge corporation now, very successful. This award was a big deal for him, sure. But I was literally convalescing from surgery. A visit, a phone call, even just a text. That's all I wanted. Just for them to care about me. That was it. I almost died, and they didn't even blink an eye. I was furious, humiliated. I racked my brain, trying to understand, trying to justify their actions. I couldn't, so I decided to text them. I laid it all out, my disbelief, my pain. How dare they prioritize his award over my well-being? How dare they not even check on me? The response came quickly, for the first time since the accident. And honestly, I wish they hadn't responded. Their words just twisted the knife deeper. First, they tried to defend themselves, claiming my brother's award was a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. I shot back that if they'd just visited me sooner, they wouldn't have missed it at all. After that, they stopped trying to argue. They just told me, flat out, that it was pointless to waste time coming to see me while my brother was out there making the family proud. That hurt more than anything. It was like I was nothing but an afterthought. And I wish I could say I was shocked, but this is how it's always been. My brother was perfect. Every step he took, every scholarship, every fancy job, every perfect grade. Celebrated. And me? I was always in the background. My achievements were never enough. My mistakes were always disasters. I felt like they'd already decided I was a failure, and nothing I did would ever change that. Then, a week after his award ceremony, my parents showed up at the hospital. Unexpectedly. I was so confused because, after our last conversation, I'd just given up on them. But I knew my parents. I knew they weren't worried. They walked in with these fake smiles, a bouquet of flowers in my hands. They tried to make small talk, asking how I was, but their eyes were darting everywhere. Their thoughts were miles away. I just told them, spit it out. Whatever you're thinking, I already know it's going to annoy me. Their lack of concern for my survival was offensive enough. I didn't need their phony pity. I barely had to prod. My mom burst into tears. My brother. He'd been arrested for fraud, a massive fraud scheme at his company. He'd been falsifying accounts, funneling funds into his personal investments. An internal investigation, the police, and boom. Arrested. Wire fraud, forgery, embezzlement. Heavy stuff. Turns out, my parents had already blown a huge chunk of their money on lawyers for him. They needed my savings. My hard-earned money from my job as a project manager at an IT company to bail him out. And did I know anyone who could pull some strings? I felt sick, like I was just a tool. Not their daughter. Just a means to clean up their perfect son's mess. The physical pain from my injuries was nothing compared to the emotional pain I felt in that moment. After everything, after they abandoned me, they had the audacity to come to me for help. It was like being slapped across the face. Lying there in a hospital bed, afraid and alone, they didn't give a damn. But now that their golden child was in danger, now they needed me. A small part of me felt guilty, like maybe I should help for a family. But the other side, it was just pure, burning anger. Why should I save him? The same brother who always had everything handed to him, who they always protected, who never faced any real consequences. And now they expected me to do it again. I told them no. Flat out. I said even if I had the money, I wouldn't help him. I reminded them, crystal clear, that they had just shown me exactly who they cared about, and it wasn't me. They called me selfish. They said family should be together. They said I'd regret it. I couldn't bring myself to care. Honestly, my brother has always come first. I was never enough for them, no matter how hard I tried. They wanted me to just forget all the times they ignored me, left me out, made me feel unimportant. But now, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control. And I wasn't going to let that go. Right now, I'm still recovering, and I'm wrestling with this mix of anger and something like relief. My parents haven't spoken to me since I said no. They're furious, I know, but I just can't care anymore. I'm done trying to earn their approval. I've wasted too much of my life on it. They keep saying family should always remain together, and sometimes a tiny part of me wonders if I'm the villain here. But the way they've treated me my entire life, and especially now, I just can't get over it. I feel like I've reached my limit. Update 1. Thank you all so much for your support on my first post. It really helped me stand my ground. I didn't expect to update so soon, but things have gotten wild. A few days after my parents' visit, I was finally discharged. I can walk, but my leg still needs crutches and breathing is still difficult while my ribs heal. All I wanted was to go home, find some peace, and escape the chaos. But the moment I got to my apartment, that hope shattered. I saw them, my parents, waiting right outside my door. They must have called the hospital, figured out my discharge time, because I certainly didn't tell them. Before I could even get my keys out, they started hammering me. They were absolutely incensed. Said I'd gone too far by not helping my brother. I've never seen them so angry. And here's the kicker. They seemed more upset with me for refusing them than they were with my brother for committing fraud. They went on and on about family first. Called me selfish, vindictive. accused me of using this as revenge because I resented my brother. They didn't care that I was still reeling from a near-death experience just a week earlier. I was just a roadblock to their beloved son's rescue. And then they had the audacity to say this was my opportunity to prove I wasn't a letdown, to show I could be part of the family by morally standing up. It was insane. They'd basically admitted I wasn't truly family unless I helped him. Things really took a turn when I told them, straight up, that I wouldn't do it. My mother broke down, sobbing right there at my door. "We've already lost one child," she wailed, "and now we're going to lose two. You're punishing us for loving him more." My dad, though, just got angrier. He didn't try to shame me. He just accused me repeatedly of being cold-hearted, selfish, having no regard for family. Said I'd regret it when they were gone. Honestly, it took everything I had not to lose it right there. Here I was, exhausted from the hospital, barely able to stand on crutches, being told I was a bad person for not cleaning up my brother's mess. It just highlighted the fact that they did intentionally treat my brother better, that they did love him more. It just burned, but I didn't back down. I warned them, leave or I'm calling the police. I wouldn't pay a dime for his bail or legal bills. They eventually backed off, but not before launching a few more insults my way. A few days after that onslaught, my brother's case exploded. It hit the headlines. Turns out the fraud was far bigger than we initially thought. The police found evidence he'd been funneling company funds for over a year, laundering some through fictitious accounts. And get this, they discovered he'd helped several colleagues hide their own embezzled money as part of a wider investigation. Now he's charged with conspiracy and money laundering on top of fraud. He's looking at some serious time behind bars. The fallout has been brutal. My parents are absolutely freaked out. For years, they'd boasted about his accomplishments to anyone who would listen. Now his reputation is utterly destroyed. People aren't buying their attempts to control the narrative, claiming it's all a misunderstanding. My dad even lost a major client when word got out about his son's involvement. They're fumbling, completely lost. Naturally, they came stumbling back to me. Desperation etched on their faces this time. No pretense. They just said they needed my help, just this once, because they were under so much stress. They insisted that if I helped my brother, they'd have an opportunity to fix things and keep the family together. But I knew exactly what that meant. Keeping the family together meant preserving the illusion that their perfect child had done nothing wrong. Fixing things meant hiding his transgressions. I told them no, again, and since then, silence. Nothing. No texts, no calls. They seem to have given up on me. And honestly, they probably see me as a hopeless failure who abandoned the family when they needed me most. But you know what? I don't give a damn anymore. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in charge. It hurts knowing my parents just saw me as a fallback, someone to control if things went sideways. But it also feels incredible. To put myself first for once. To finally say no. I won't help my brother, and I won't let them use guilt to force me to clean up a mess they helped create. Now, they have to deal with the consequences of their choices. Update 2. So many of you have been asking how I'm doing, and honestly, things have gotten even messier. I received an email from my brother. He doesn't have phone access while incarcerated, so he persuaded a friend, one who still believes he's innocent, to contact me on his behalf. At first, I was just going to delete it. I figured it was another guilt trip, another attempt to manipulate me into helping him. But curiosity, I guess, got the better of me. I opened it. In the email, my brother claimed he was being framed. He swore he wasn't the mastermind, but he did admit he was part of the fraud. He said the superiors used him as a scapegoat to hide their own wrongdoing. He even implied that powerful executives were still walking free while he was stuck taking the fall. He pleaded for my help, not for our parents' sake, but because he believed I was the only one who could stop the family from disintegrating entirely. That line, it really offended me. But then he said something else. Something odd. He finally admitted how poisonous our parents have been. He acknowledged that they've consistently mistreated me and exploited him to stroke their egos. Seeing him admit that, after he'd always just gone along with it, was surreal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was just saying whatever he thought would persuade me, especially when he circled back to me saving the family, exactly what our parents have been preaching since this whole fiasco began. Still, a tiny voice in my head kept asking, what if there's some truth to it? What if he is being set up? What if I'm underestimating how huge this really is? Part of me just had to know. So I decided to investigate. I talked to a lawyer friend I trust. They couldn't give me a full legal breakdown since they weren't involved, but they did point me in the right direction to find more information. After digging a bit, I discovered something shocking. My brother's story wasn't entirely untrue. He was definitely a fraudster, no doubt about that. But from what I could understand, it seemed he wasn't the one pulling all the strings. Apparently, he was used as a pawn by some high-level executives who'd been siphoning corporate funds for years. Because he oversaw specific accounts, he was left holding the bag when everything went south. These executives were masters at covering their tracks, and they made sure he took the brunt of it. I felt so torn after learning all this. On one hand, I was still furious that he got involved in something so shady in the first place. Mastermind or pawn, he was part of a serious crime. He wasn't some innocent bystander. He knew what he was doing. He probably just thought he'd never get caught. But on the other hand, a part of me felt a little pity. Knowing he was exploited by people with more power and expertise in hiding their crimes, that's tough. It's clear these executives were seasoned pros, and they made sure my brother was disposable. I couldn't help but wonder if things would have turned out differently if he hadn't been raised in a household that practically encouraged shortcuts, as long as you looked successful. He probably thought he was untouchable because of our parents' never-ending protection and adoration. When I told my folks what I'd found, they were unusually silent. They didn't want to admit it, but I think, deep down, they understood he wasn't an innocent victim. Still, they kept pushing the same old narrative. I was selfish, callous, not prioritizing family. Talking to them was like talking to a brick wall. So I've made my decision. I'm done. My brother, no matter how much he wants to blame those executives, made his bed. Now he has to lie in it. If my parents want to keep supporting him, that's on them. If the situations were reversed, I wouldn't ruin my life trying to help someone who wouldn't lift a finger for me. Honestly, I haven't felt this at ease in a long time. My family will never believe it, but I know I've made the right decision. I've been treated like I didn't matter for far too long. I'm sick of it. My brother's predicament is awful, but I am not responsible for fixing it. Again, thank you to everyone who has supported me. It hasn't been easy, but knowing I'm not alone has been a huge comfort. Update 3. It's been over a month since my last post, and I finally have enough to share another update. First, my parents. When they realized insulting me and begging me wouldn't work, they moved on to their next strategy, making my life even more miserable. They contacted several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. They twisted the story, painting me as selfish and disdainful for not helping my brother. They made it sound like my refusal was pure spite, that I was just sitting on a mountain of money. They told everyone I was a monster, not to be trusted. I only found out the truth when one of my cousins called me, horrified, to tell me my parents were spreading vicious rumors. Of course, they conveniently left out the part where they abandoned me in the hospital and hadn't checked on me since. They completely inverted the narrative to make it seem like I was harboring resentment, that I was only ever called upon to help my brother. At first, it hurt, deeply. Even though I'd been defending myself for so long, it felt like I was being punished all over again. I thought I'd be completely alone. But then, something totally unexpected happened. Instead of siding with my parents, several distant relatives started contacting me. Turns out, my parents' treatment of others, their constant favoritism towards my brother, had alienated a lot of people over the years. I had no idea how deep this went. I started hearing stories from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and honestly, each one was more shocking than the last. An aunt told me how my brother once borrowed a huge sum of money from her husband for a business venture. The plan flopped, naturally, and when she tried to get her money back, my parents cut all ties with her. They even spread rumors that she was greedy and unsupportive of her family. Another cousin recounted how, at a family gathering years ago, my brother crashed my uncle's car and blamed the parking lot attendant. To save face, my parents supported him and made sure the truth never got out. When my uncle tried to confront them, they accused him of trying to damage my brother's reputation. There were so many examples like this. My parents either covered up my brother's wrongdoings or silenced anyone who dared to speak up. One relative even mentioned how my parents ruined a business partnership my brother had with another family member because they thought the relative wasn't renowned enough to be associated with their son. Hearing all of this was both startling and incredibly reassuring. I wasn't insane. It was true. My parents do have a long history of ignoring everyone else and hiding behind my brother. For so long, I believed I was somehow to blame for their treatment, that I wasn't good enough or didn't live up to their standards. But I see it now, it was never about me. They always wanted to keep my brother safe at any cost, even if it meant alienating family members who questioned them or stood in their way. And for those wondering why they were so desperate for my help, it's because, despite their complete lack of encouragement, I've built a strong life for myself. I have good relationships. I've managed my finances wisely as a project manager for a reputable IT company, saving money and making smart investments. My parents knew I had the money, which is why they were so frantic. What they failed to realize, though, is that just because I could help didn't mean I would, especially for people who've treated me like an afterthought my entire life. As for my brother's case, there's been an update. My parents eventually scrounged up enough cash from loans and favors to get him out of jail after I refused to bail him out. But the investigation was far from over. A few weeks ago, my brother decided to cooperate with the authorities. From what I understand, he provided information about the higher-ups involved in the scam, which helped the prosecution build their case. As a result, he received a lighter sentence. He'll serve a year in prison, then community service instead of years. Honestly, that doesn't make me feel any better. His cooperation is commendable, but it doesn't change the fact that he chose to participate in the first place. And I don't think this will fundamentally change him. I don't think he'll stop expecting my parents to clean up his messes anytime soon. For my part, I've officially cut contact with my parents permanently. It's probably something I should have done a long time ago. They're blocked on everything. I even instructed the front desk of my building to deny them entry if they show up unannounced. I'm just tired of being their fallback option, their scapegoat, their emotional punching bag. And surprisingly, I'm not depressed about it. I always thought leaving my family would be a profound loss, but instead it feels incredibly liberating. I can finally live my life without constantly comparing myself to my brother or begging for crumbs of affection from people who would never truly offer it. The family members who reached out, they've been incredible. They've shown me I'm not alone, and for the first time in a long time, I feel supported. It's weird, after years of my parents excluding me, I've unexpectedly found a family. I'm actually excited to get to know these relatives better. Many of them have invited me to family events where my parents won't be present. One of my aunts even expressed regret for not realizing the situation sooner. She said she always felt something wasn't right with how my parents treated me, but she kept quiet to avoid a fight. Now, she's one of my biggest supporters. For the first time, I feel genuinely hopeful, even though I have no idea what the future holds. Thank you all for your help and guidance throughout this journey. Reading your comments helped me realize I wasn't insane for standing up for myself. It hasn't been easy, but it feels so amazing to finally feel like I'm in charge of my own life. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own peace? Tell me what you think in the comments. I really want to hear your stories.